Despite my reliable daughter sending me $4,000 every month, what's with the one canned food from you, my eldest son's wife? It feels like harassment. Out of the blue, I got a scolding over the phone from my mother-in-law, with whom I seldom communicate, for something I wasn't even aware of. The decision on how much to send to my in-laws was discussed and agreed upon with my husband and his sister, Alice. Alice and her husband had said that they couldn't afford to send money for a while due to family circumstances. I hadn't heard anything about suddenly being able to send $4,000, so I was overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's claims. If you are the wife of my eldest son, you should follow my capable daughter and send cash instead of canned food. If there's a $4,000 allowance already, there's no need for us to contribute as well, right? We'll stop sending money. A month later, on the usual monthly transfer day, I did as I had declared and didn't make the transfer. As a result, my in-laws and Alice made a huge fuss and stormed our house. Everyone argued their righteousness, but one person's fury led to an outcry. My husband and I met through volunteer activities in our area. I lived in an apartment for single women, and my husband lived in the company's dorm. The volunteer activities we did once a month varied, but most were aimed at beautifying the area. We happened to be in the same group picking up trash together, and we were the third couple to end up getting married from that group. Our fellow volunteers, who had shared hardships with us, gave us a grand celebration, and we started a new life in a new place. We had to move from the familiar area because my husband had to leave the dorm upon getting married, and at the same time, he was transferred. In the new place, we quickly fit in with the local people thanks to our communication skills. Later, I became pregnant and gave birth to twin daughters. By then, my husband had been promoted, and we moved into a larger house for the kids. I've always been skilled with my hands and loved crafting. It all started when my grandmother was struggling to dispose of old scraps, and I asked her to give them to me if she was going to throw them away. I made things like small containers from those materials, and I remember how happy it made my grandmother. The joy of seeing old items being reborn and used, and the smiles of the owners when they get them back, were incredibly fulfilling for me. Then, my grandmother asked me to start making small items, and it became popular among her friends who approached me asking if I could repurpose items for a fee. At first, it was really just covering the cost of materials, but when I casually posted about it on social media, I started getting orders from people willing to pay more than just for materials to have me make them. It was around this time that I felt my craft was recognized, and I made a certain decision. However, after getting married and having children, the time I could spend on my hobby of crafting became limited. But being naturally optimistic, I figured I could make time to create things for my two daughters instead of others. As the twins grew up quickly, the period they could wear children's clothes was short. It seemed such a waste to dispose of clothes that could still be worn, so I used them to make remade clothes and tailored matching dresses and skirts for them to wear. As a result, I encountered more than I could have imagined, but that's a story for another time. My twin daughters were very well behaved, and as they grew, they became less and less of a handful. While they were kids, I was happy to see their growth, but of course I had frustrations. However, as they needed me less, I felt a twinge of sadness, though I should have been happy. I can't quite explain this feeling, but maybe it's a sense of alienation, thinking about the day when they really won't need me anymore. Then one day, out of the blue, I got a call from my mother-in-law. Our relationship was neither good nor bad. We didn't visit my husband's parents often, and since my husband prioritized his work and our family, we only went to their house around the holidays. So, my mother-in-law didn't interfere much with my husband, and she never came over unexpectedly. She usually only contacted us to ask about what we're gonna do for the holidays or if we were coming back for New Year's, but since it wasn't the season for either, I was nervous when I picked up the phone.
Always a nuisance. What's with these monthly annoyances? You must really have a lot of free time,
she yelled right off the bat. I couldn't understand at all what my mother-in-law was talking about and ended up sounding pretty clueless in response. It seems my response just made my mother-in-law even angrier, and she let loose on me.
My capable daughter sends me $4,000 every month, and all you send is one canned food? Are you a stingy daughter-in-law or what? Are you pocketing my son's earnings?
She complained that sending just one canned food a month is a nuisance. Plus, even though it's just one canned food, the box it comes in is pretty big, so she feels deceived by the size of the box every time. She must think I'm laughing at her disappointment from the false hope, wanting to see what kind of parents raised such a malicious woman. Her complaints were endless. My husband and I discussed and decided to transfer money to my mother-in-law's account every month.
We transfer $6,200 to the designated account on the agreed date every month. I have the receipts saved, and there's proof in the bank statement. I don't really understand all that. You refuse to send it by registered cash mail, which is why it's your fault. So, I leave the account management to my daughter. She's well-versed in these modern transactions and takes good care of me, unlike you, who does nothing.
How bad you are. That's why daughters-in-law who come from outside are no good, she keeps complaining. Although my mother-in-law herself came from outside, I don't understand why I'm the only one being criticized. Moreover, it was my mother-in-law who refused the registered cash mail. Because it's expensive and takes days. Why it turned into me refusing it is beyond me. What's even more puzzling is about my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is a housewife, and considering her husband's income, a $4,000 monthly allowance should be pretty tough. It would require significant cutbacks to keep it up, and realistically, it should be hard to come up with $4,000 every month. Even if my sister-in-law changed her mind and started working outside, I can't imagine her, who proudly declared housewife is the best actually earning outside. That's when I thought. Maybe my sister-in-law, who manages my mother-in-law's account, is embezzling the $6,200 we send, and pretending it's her and her husband sending the $4,000. I decided I shouldn't have to send money if all I'm gonna get are complaints.
If you're unhappy with our contributions, we'll just stop. We were planning on reviewing the amount anyway since we'll need more money for the kids moving forward.
It was actually my husband who suggested revising the contributions, but since it comes out of our family's income, I was inclined to agree if he thought it was necessary. While my mother-in-law was ranting on the other end of the phone, I ignored her and hung up. After that, she called a few more times, but I ignored those too. Eventually, the calls stopped coming. Then, the next month, on the day we usually sent the money, I did as I had declared and did not make the transfer. Surprisingly, I received a call from my sister-in-law, Alice. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law, who was only getting one canned food, was prompting her now. But it must have been quite inconvenient for Alice herself. So, I figured she was the one who initiated direct negotiation. Sure enough, as soon as I answered, Alice skipped the pleasantries and jumped right into talking about the money.
Hey, did you forget what day it is? Mom's been on my back about it, so could you please take care of it right now? You can handle it quickly with your smartphone, right?
Though what she meant was to send the money quickly, her tone was as cheerful as could be, not wanting to cause a stir.
Didn't your mother tell you? We decided to stop the money transfers starting this month.
Alice choked up at that. Suddenly, she started stuttering and seemed to lose track of her thoughts, getting flustered.
What? What are you talking about? Mom hasn't told me anything like that. Why would you make such a decision without including me? You know, you're such a capable daughter, sending $4,000 every month to your mom. She was just praising you the other day. Since you can afford to send that much, we don't need to contribute, right? With the twins getting older and costing more, we've decided to save what we used to send as their education fund.
During our talk, it seemed like my sister-in-law, Alice, realized I had caught on to what she was doing. I could hear a sigh followed by a click of her tongue over the phone. She thought I couldn't hear, but I clearly heard her mutter. That old lady, stirring up trouble. She seems aware that she's been spoiled by our mother-in-law, and feels like she can do whatever she wants.
You know that I can't send $4,000 to Mom every month, right? You're aware of that, aren't you?
That's right. The whole reason we, as a couple, started sending a large sum of $6,200 was because Alice and her husband couldn't afford to send anything to the parents. She wanted us to pay more, just for a while. That's what she meant. It was supposed to be just for a while until they could manage to regularly contribute a certain amount. It should have been something like that. It's been quite some time since that conversation.
If you're still sending $6,200, doesn't that mean you have some financial flexibility? It's tough for us. I married a man with no earnings, and our finances are really tight.
So, she argued that it shouldn't be a problem if they cut down by $4,000. It's not Alice's money anyway, whether it's $4,000 or even $1. She shouldn't even be talking about it. I couldn't believe she didn't understand this basic thing. I felt like telling her to go back to elementary school in my mind.
The remaining $4,000 was given to Mom, and that should be enough. You were pretending it was you who paid, right? Why didn't you say it was from us?
Then Alice said that it didn't matter who the money came from, as long as it was coming. However, her saying it doesn't matter is what started this big issue, and she's not even aware of how serious it is. Her reckless remarks continued.
I mean, I've even pretended that you were sending canned goods for Mom, right? Well, it's just one can, but that one costs a few $1,000s. It's a luxury can that you can't often eat, so Mom should be satisfied with that.
Alice, barely holding back her laughter, seemed pleased with herself. It turns out that our mother-in-law doesn't realize she's been getting luxury canned goods. She thought they were just regular cans that you could buy at the supermarket and complained to me about it. Hearing Alice's terrible attitude and way of thinking again, I felt even stronger that we should not continue the financial support.
I have no intention of resuming the payments. What? What's that supposed to mean? Are you abandoning me? Well, the payments were meant for our parents-in-law, not you. That's only natural, right? Oh, I see. You're abandoning me then? Don't come crying to me later.
Alice yelled in a shrill voice and spat out what sounded like threats before hanging up unilaterally. A few days later, without any prior notice, my mother-in-law and Alice showed up at our family home. Our in-laws live about a 30-minute drive away, but Alice lives out of state, so we usually only meet during family gatherings. What could possibly bring Alice all the way here? I was puzzled about why they had come. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me, she approached with a stern face and no greetings.
It sounds like you've been bullying my daughter? Stop picking on the weak and just resume the payments right away.
Hearing my mother-in-law's demands, I realized Alice must have twisted the story to suit herself. Yet, despite knowing what Alice had done, my mother-in-law blamed me entirely.
If you resume the payments, everything will settle down. I might not get the full amount, but I'll get enough, and it will improve my daughter's life. It's all good things.
Then, my father-in-law appeared. It seems he drove my mother-in-law and Alice here. I was relieved to see his face, hoping for some support, but something seemed off.
What's going on? This still hasn't been resolved?
That's right, you know.
She is unexpectedly stubborn.
A woman should be humble and obedient, it's more charming.
We have various payments coming up, and we planned around the monthly support we were counting on. Just go ahead and pay it.
To my dismay, it turned out that my father-in-law was of the same mind as the other two. I felt intimidated. Because of his muscular and imposing figure. Thinking that if he resorted to physical measures, I wouldn't be able to say anything.
What happened to all that fire you had just now? It's sad to see you crying, but it's your own stubbornness that's to blame.
Alice insisted that I had no chance of winning against the three of them, so I should just admit defeat and transfer the money quickly. If you don't do it before your husband gets back, who knows what might happen to your twin daughters? She even threatened. I couldn't disregard such comments when my daughters were brought into it.
If you tattle to your son about this, it won't just be the grandkids, I'll make sure you can't even walk outside.
They all had smug smiles on their faces. Alice grabbed my smartphone and urged me to make the transfer quickly. My father-in-law started looking around the room for anything valuable he could possibly take. I bowed my head and wiped my tears, and Alice muttered a small "I won." She was so focused on my gestures that she didn't notice the slight relaxation of my mouth. "You can come out now." Reacting to my words, my husband stepped out from the closet in the room. His veins were bulging on his forehead with anger as he glared at his mother and two siblings. They had assumed that only I would be home at this time. They had no idea that my husband had been hiding in the closet, listening to the entire conversation. Caught off guard, the three of them were speechless. Their mouths agape in utter stupidity. I never thought it would be this bad. To think that my own parents and sister could be such scum. It's pathetic. Overwhelmed with anger, shock, and sadness, my husband was unable to control his emotions. Although his face and words expressed rage, his emotions were a mix of disbelief and sorrow as tears flowed. I had always longed for a warm family environment. A home filled with constant smiles and the cheerful voices of children. That was always my dream. There was a reason for it. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young. Miraculously, I survived, but since my parents had eloped to get married, no relatives wanted to take me in. Especially my maternal relatives, who were furious that their precious daughter had been taken away so abruptly, while my paternal relatives just kept apologizing. My parents didn't have individual funerals. Instead, there was a joint ceremony for all those who died in the accident. At that funeral, the two families met and bickered over what to do with me. Seeing this, my paternal grandmother, insisting that a child should not be blamed, decided to take me in. Then, the paternal relatives targeted my grandmother with unkind words and declared they would not provide any assistance. I was raised by my paternal grandmother until high school. My grandmother left me a significant sum of money, insisting that no matter what, I should attend college, and I honored her wishes. My grandmother was a very generous person, always surrounded by friends. After her passing, it was her friends and neighbors who helped me become who I am today. Actually, she too had longed for a bright and happy family. She had married my grandfather on her parents' orders without knowing love. It was a loveless marriage, so my grandfather was hardly home, leaving the family feeling cold. I always wished my grandmother could have experienced a joyful family life. Although I couldn't fulfill that wish for her, I promised to become happier and happier as a story to tell when I eventually join her. Continuing my grandmother's belief that picking up trash brings good fortune, I kept doing it after she was gone. And that's how I met my husband. I believe our relationship was a connection she had made for me. Having witnessed the tension between both sides of my family in my childhood, I tried my best not to have a bad relationship with my in-laws. To me, my in-laws represented the parents I never knew, so I wanted to cherish them. Honestly, we couldn't afford to send as much as $6,200 just from my husband's earnings. That amount included a lot of my own sentiment. When I was single, I used to post my handmade remakes on social media and connected with various people, which reminded me to post the clothes I made for my daughters again. Being busy with childcare, social media was my only way to connect with the outside world. It has the advantage of connecting with someone regardless of time, and finding sympathy with others facing similar struggles was encouraging. People who had bought my remakes during my single days were happy to see my handiwork on social media again and even asked if I would take orders. In the midst of this, I received a request to see actual pictures of the children wearing the clothes. Indeed, the image is quite different when you see the clothes on a mannequin compared to being worn. However, I hesitated to post pictures of my own children online. During this exchange, a clothing manufacturer approached me with a proposal to use models for the photo shoot. Apparently, they had been fond of my work for some time and had been following the positive comments about it. They suggested partnering with them would not only save time on production but also protect personal privacy, and they wanted me to consider it. When I discussed it with my husband, it turned out that this manufacturer had dealings with his company and was trustworthy, so we went together to their office and signed a contract. I initially thought it was just a representation agreement, but it actually evolved into launching a new brand. The launch was successful from the start, and when the topic of sending money to my in-laws came up, I suggested contributing a bit myself, which led to the total of $6,200. After explaining why he could send such a large amount, my husband expressed his anger physically.
"How dare you trample over such thoughtful efforts by my wife?" "But I didn't know that." "You didn't? Do you have any idea how hard it is to earn money? Have you ever earned $6,200 in a month yourself? The household budget is tight, and you can't make the effort to contribute, even with a part-time job? Someone who steals my wife's kindness isn't family at all."
He told them he didn't want to see their faces again and physically threw my sister-in-law, Alice, out of the house. My mother-in-law, seeing Alice being thrown out, felt threatened and suddenly changed her attitude, apologized.
"Please forgive us. I'll scold my daughter harshly, so please don't stop the payments. Even a few $1,000s would be fine." "Quiet. It's clear you're only apologizing because you want money. We might as well be cutting ties, so no more payments. Don't ever show up in front of our family again."
Even my mother-in-law was kicked out. I thought my husband wouldn't stand a chance against my physically imposing father-in-law, but surprisingly, he too was quickly thrown out. It seems that all that muscle was just for show. Afterward, the new brand I was working on continued to grow successfully. Although it was initially online only, the popularity of the designs meant they often sold out instantly, and we started to offer them in stores as well. With the ability to see and try on the actual products, sales increased even further. Currently, it's only in major cities, but we are starting to consider expanding nationwide. As a result, things have gotten busier, and I often find it challenging to manage household chores and childcare, but my husband, Tom, has been a great support. I am incredibly grateful to him, and he says, "They are my daughters, after all it's only natural." Furthermore, he jokes that he's getting in good graces now before dads become annoying to their kids someday. Raising kids isn't just about pampering them, I think. But seeing Tom joyfully interact with our daughters makes me think it's okay if I am a bit stricter, balancing his indulgence. It makes parenting enjoyable, and it's a reminder of how wonderful family can be. Tom had actually looked up and found that my maternal grandmother is still alive and well. I hold no grudges against my parents' relatives, but I'm not ready to meet them yet. However, I feel that a day will come soon when I will visit my maternal grandmother with my family. It seems that my in-laws had sternly demanded that my sister-in-law, Alice, and her husband contribute financially. After being so lenient with Alice, they drastically changed their attitude and insisted she find a job, even if it's part-time. I heard from the neighborhood gossip that they even went so far as to apply for night jobs on her behalf without her consent because daytime jobs don't pay enough. However, Alice resisted and missed her job interviews. Apparently, Alice is just an average person without the skills to flatter men, and it showed on her face. There were rumors that she was not hired just from her resume picture. As a result, my in-laws tried to force Alice to work and send them money from her salary, but it didn't work out, and they are living on a tight pension. My mother-in-law is healthy enough to work if she wasn't so picky about jobs, but she has been a housewife since getting married and has no intention of earning money. There was a time when Alice's husband questioned the source of an unexpected $4,000. Alice claimed it was money earned from an online business and insisted she had the right to spend it as she pleased. Her husband, having read an article about housewives earning supplemental income through crafts like handmade goods, believed Alice's claim without any doubt. In this recent uproar, it was revealed that Alice was lying. Moreover, when Alice's husband, John, discovered that she had been embezzling the money I was sending to help my in-laws, he vehemently condemned her character and actions as unthinkable for any decent person. John had been considering taking on night jobs just to scrape together some money for the support payments when this incident happened. Frustrated and disillusioned with Alice's lack of cooperation, he saw this revelation as an opportunity and told her he wanted a divorce. He expressed that he couldn't stand to breathe the same air as such a cruel person and kicked her out of the house. She would be forced to work if she returned to her parents' home, but she has nowhere to go and is currently missing. No one in the family seems inclined to look for her.